I might be here.
Okay. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and kick things off, and then they show up later, then that's fine. So welcome everybody to this week's PD. For those, everybody on Zoom, everybody hear us?
Yeah.
Everybody good? Okay. Yeah, so for those that are new to this and haven't been to one of our PDs before, so we started this initiative about a year ago. Each week we have a different topic that we have a discussion about, just to kind of create some insight, some education, all in the mindset of kind of growth personally and professionally. So this week we have a special PD. Obviously we have special guests from the MFLC and our key spouses. So I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute and then get things kicked off. But let's see, I had a couple notes here. This was all planned by Chuck Collins. He's not able to attend with us today, but he's out there hacking the mission. So that's kind of the norm for us in the C5. Things are rapidly changing, dynamic environment. This year has kind of been one of those where things kicked off from, or last year I should say, 2020, kicked off with the Iran response, right? Immediately, New Year's Day, people were getting set up for missions, going out. Then we had the fire evacuations, no notice alert. Families are evacuating their homes while spouses are out flying to San Antonio. So not to mention COVID and all those other things. So it's a dynamic environment, and how do we build resiliency for that dynamic environment? Giving us tools and keys to success. So they're going to share. They're the experts, so they're going to share some of that with us. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, give us some of those information and keys to success, what they provide, and then share some stories, and then have some questions later. So
Perfect.
Steve, I'll kick it off to you.
Yeah, so again, my name is Steven. I'm the MFLC assigned youth folks. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I also sent Lieutenant Bailey a kind of a action card, so to speak, with my direct contact info and a few bullets of exactly what I do and what I do not do. So he also advised that he's going to be shooting that out to everyone after today. So yeah, I work with this squadron. I'm assigned to you folks and assigned to a few others on base. My whole purpose is to provide support in an anonymous way. My job is not to leave a footprint, no documentation, and I work with people in group settings, obviously like this. I work with families, I work with couples and individuals, building their relationships and helping them get back in balance. Professionally, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I did my undergrad at Western Michigan University. I did graduate school at Loma Linda University in Southern Cal. And I've been practicing for just a little over 6 years.
All right, and if you guys want to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about the key spouses and what you guys provide.
My name is Kristen Gephardt-Cecil. I've been married to my husband for 12 years, I think. And we are on the enlisted side, and it's been a whirlwind. And I think you kind of come into this having this, weird expectation, and it's completely different. And I've really learned through different squadrons, it's what you make of it, and it's who the people that you surround yourself with. So as a key spouse, I think we're just kind of liaisons between spouses who maybe don't want to directly contact squadron leadership, if they just have questions, hey, how do I make a medical appointment, who do I reach out to, having issues with this. Just kind of information providers as a non-formal squadron personnel.
I'm Shanna Blankenberg, and I've been married to Leighton for about 4 years. And we're pretty new to the military still, really. We've really only been in this game for about 5 years. So we're still learning too, but definitely just community and learning to love people in your squadron and be in terms with them is really the key to what we do.
Awesome.
My name's Jessica Morgan. I've been married to Cody for going on 10 years this year. We are fairly newish as well. I think about 8 years in the military, and so it's definitely a changing game every day. And I think each squadron and each assignment has its different stress to have a fantastic support group here and with the key spouses, so we love being able to help everybody out too.
All right, if you want to
Cool.
kick off.
Yeah,
with your-
definitely. So I was asked to, I was asked to present a little bit of info on resiliency, and hopefully some of you already have a, decent grasp or have some of the knowledge I'm gonna present. Hopefully there's some of this new information that can be helpful. One thing I'd like to do before we begin is just a quick 4-question, completely anonymous quiz. I've put anonymous settings on my profile with this. So if everyone could go to, on your smartphone, POLLEV.com/StephenMorrow113. I think it's up on the URL if you can see it. If you can't, I'm happy to repeat it again. POLLEV.com. And then if y'all want to do it too, you can. POLLEV.com/StephenMorrow, MAURO,
Or is it
113.
behind him?
It's in the Slack link.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Slack link. Join CD.
And a part of the reason behind what I'm asking you to do, again, this is anonymous, I like to keep as much of a empirical data approach as possible. And so when everyone votes, I'll show you the percentages on my laptop that I'm getting live responses from. Yes. URO 113.
Is there a slash or no?
Does it just say on the first question?
I control.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still getting responses here, so I'll show you guys the percentages after everyone gets in there. Just out of curiosity, do you know how many people are on Zoom right now?
Yeah. There are 33 people watching.
So 33.
And I just posted the link to the Zoom, so maybe give it just 1 or 2
Okay.
minutes so people can pull up that link and answer the question.
So as of right now, 10% of the responding is a little bit, 33% of the responding is moderate, 52% is a lot, and 5% is unimaginable, just from the people reporting in this room and on Zoom. I don't want to take too terribly long, so we're up to now 57% on a lot. There's only 4 questions total, so I'm going to go hop to the next one really quick. The next question is, do you believe stress is good or bad? So far, we have 80% reporting good, 13% bad, 6% not sure, and the bad and not sure is going back
I
and
think
forth.
both do, right?
And now we're down to 74% good, 72% good. So right now we're at 75% good, 13% bad, 13% not sure. I'm gonna hop over to the next question. And what specific ways can stress negatively impact your health?
Just one answer.
At the bottom, there's all of the above.
And I did that on purpose.
Yes, 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 yes.
So I purposely wrote this question this way to try and get a laugh, but also to kind of show the severe impact that it can impact your health. And there's a number of, items on this list that still aren't. There's still a number of items that are not on this list that still negatively impact your health, and we'll go over a couple of those later. The last one is kind of a trick question. What are a few components of defining resiliency? And I already have a few victims. I still have a few victims. Answers aren't in the slideshow. Oh, it's all good. So we'll talk about this later in the slideshow, but so the actual correct answer is D, answers A and C, toughness and elasticity. And so I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of this. I will. So if you guys want to know the real percentages again really quick, so again on the first question, 50%, so over or at least half reported a lot of stress, 4% reported unimaginable amounts of stress, 38% reported moderate stress, 8% reported a little bit of stress. 73% of the folks reported that stress is good, 12% of the folks reported that stress is bad, 15% of the folks reported they're not sure if stress is good or bad, which is good. I was hoping for the negative impacts on health would be 100% on all of the above, but I'm glad that it got a little bit of you laughing. And then again, 3% reported toughness on a few components of defining resiliency. 3% reported stoicism. 26% responded elasticity, 58% responded answers A and C, and 10% responded B and C. Y'all mind if I take this up? I'm getting winded a little bit. So this was just to kind of, I don't know, hopefully push your mind a little bit to kind of prep it for what we're going to discuss today. You're on the agenda. So hopefully we can get into some good and bad stress, strategies to increasing stress resiliency, the connection of mind and body, some of the warning flags or red flags, what stress can or is doing to us, types of stress, and how to work with stress. One other quick thing that I hope today can be is kind of more of a discussion for at least people in the room. I don't really enjoy talking at people. I enjoy talking with people. So if you have a question, raise your hand, cut me off. I hope that you folks can be curious today. I'm gonna skip. So some of the strategies working with stress resiliency. One of the key points is that oftentimes people will, in fact, they're not sure if stress is okay. They're not sure if stress is bad. Majority of people reported stress is good, and I would agree with that if your mental framework or how you see yourself and how you see the world around you is in line with your beliefs. I'll say that one more time. Stress is good, stress is helpful if how you view yourself and how you view the world around you aligns with your beliefs. And again, that's kind of a tricky statement, similar to what are the components of resiliency I asked earlier. A lot of the, I guess, challenges or roadblocks with stress, there's a lot of if, and, or but statements that go with it. And so, yeah, someone could be really good at, using coping mechanism A, and then 10 years down the road, coping mechanism A no longer works, and then, they take their life, or they turn to drugs and alcohol, or they, turn to infidelity, or they turn to all of these really nasty outcomes simply because, yeah, they had a handle on it for a little bit and that worked, but they over relied on it. And so part of that resiliency component is, yeah, you have to be able to be stretched and be elastic and recognize that, hey, things aren't gonna work, and that's okay, but guess what? That's not an excuse to, again, turn to these really, really negative coping mechanisms that can ultimately, again, not being overly dramatic, but can ultimately ruin your life. I'm on page 8. So again, some of the negative effects of stress on the body, we had that super long list. And I'm kind of curious for everyone in the room, what type of positive things can stress elicit? What good can come from stress?
Being productive.
Okay, productivity? Anything else?
Heightens your focus. You're in a high stress situation.
Okay, so increased focus, we got productivity, increased focus. Anything else?
Motivation.
Say again?
Motivation.
Yeah. And I love those answers, and one of the things too is that the kind of the big picture, those are more specific things, which I love. The big picture is one of the positive things stress can do or cause is change. And some people do better with change than others. Some people don't. If you don't do good with change, genuinely, I kind of feel bad for you, because change will happen whether you want it to or not. And if you're in that position, you know, recognizing and understanding the effects of change and not being able to tap into that resiliency mindset or that mental framework to adapt to change can, again, cause a lot of negative setbacks. One of the analogies used that they talk about here is stress is like a body temperature. And then what do we do when it's either too high or too low? What happens when there's no stress in your life? What happens when stress is too high in your life? What happens?
When it's too low, you can stagnate and not want to change.
Yeah. Complacency?
Paralyze you?
When it's too high?
Yeah.
Anything else? Back to kind of the good stress. So it can be good for you when you find the right balance. Again, a lot of those if, and, or but statements. And I like the one, I think someone said over here, motivation. And when stress can create that motivation, oftentimes motivation is that fuel for change, or that little like oomph that you needed to kind of push through whatever wall you're up against. And one of the interesting things about the mind-body connection with stress is that the healthier your mind, the easier it is to overcome stress. And I know this is going to sound like super cliche, and I hate cliche sayings, but it's accurate, unfortunately. When your mind, body, and soul are in line, you get, it's almost a, I don't want to go overboard by saying euphoric feeling, but it is a feeling of contentment where it really doesn't matter what happens. You get PCS'd out of the blue, so you experience an atrocity in your family. Yeah, that's terrible, but that doesn't mean that you have to ruin your life because something bad happened, right? And when you're able to adapt to these various mindsets, you know, it's that much easier. It's so much less taxing on your person that, you know, these atrocities turn into, you know, a speed bump instead of, you know, a 3-foot thick concrete wall. So
How do you
far,
get to that point, though? I mean, just
Say again?
saying, how do you get to that point? Just saying, okay, I'm gonna be really good when the next stressor comes around. And like, how do you get to that point to where everything is?
I was waiting for
okay?
someone to ask that. Thank you. I mean, it's kind of funny of an answer, but also true. Therapy, individual therapy, seriously. But what is learned throughout that process is and we'll get into it a little bit later, is acceptance. Acceptance with the control paradigm of what do we control? Literally, what do you control? What do you want to be different? And can you accept the things that you do not control? And that portion is what usually gets people. Accepting that there are things in this world out of their control that will happen, whether you want it to or not, whether it's good or bad for you. And when you can be okay with that, it's a lot easier to stomach those really nasty things. And again, I'm a therapist, right? So I'm a huge advocate for therapy. But yeah, and that's a big portion of what you can learn in therapy if you're open enough to it. If you're accepting of the fact that, hey, I can't do this on my own. That's okay. Congratulations, you're a human being. Participation trophy, right? And so, it's, I don't think I should. My wife is active duty here at Travis. We PCS here from Right Pat. And I was like, yes, out of Ohio. Ohio sucks. And then, like, 3 months later, our house almost burned down. And right before that, we almost died with COVID. And then I'm like, man, California's not that cool. And so, I think we could all kind of embrace, the fires here, the COVID thing here. And, these are two, wildly large things that are out of our control. And I think that I could be biased, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the fire scare for whatever it was, a day or two, was a lot easier to kind of conceptualize, stomach, process, and move on, because it was like 48 hours, if that. We left, some stayed, some helped evacuate, and for the majority, it was like, oh, whew, good to go. And with this COVID thing, first we have a plan, now we don't have a plan, then we had a plan, then we don't have a plan, then we have the vaccines, then we don't have the vaccines, and then they're approved, and then they're not approved, and then it's like, well, I'm not going to take the vaccine, well, I want to take the vaccine, and then there's so many variables out of our control. Oftentimes, generally speaking, rule of thumb, action is a cure for anxiety or overwhelming thoughts, because when you can take action, you can create productivity and progress and things like that. This is one of those examples where action, your own personal action, doesn't work, right? And so it goes back to your initial question: how do you deal with that? It's working to adopt a new mindset of how you approach things. Working when COVID kind of first slapped us in the face here last March. What I saw in therapy with active duty members and their family was everyone was trying to play by the rules of pre-COVID, and that wasn't working. And they were like, "Oh, why isn't this working?" Well, COVID. You can't play by pre-COVID rules in a COVID environment, and so it was recognizing that, hey, the action that we used to take isn't helping. We need new types of action. And so it's slowly, relaxed over time, but it's recognizing that there has to be change, there has to be truth. So I talked a little bit about a mental framework, how you see yourself, how you see the world around you. In cognitive behavioral therapy, they talk about 4 schemas, and those 4 schemas are the makeup of seeing yourself, seeing the world around you. It's person, how you see other people, it's events, it's social, and it's self. So how you see other people and their behavioral patterns, how you see yourself and where you want to be. Sorry, I'm on slide 11. Sorry.
He's just focused on listening to you.
Say again?
He's just focused on listening, I think.
I'll do better at that.
Yeah.
The schema of self, understanding where you're at and your idealized future. And then the social schema of the general knowledge of society, norms, values. A good example here is the social schema of the military with customs and courtesies, right? If you were viewing the civilian world and the customs and courtesies of the military, you'd be confused. Because that just doesn't happen in the civilian world, right? so again, recognizing that each world has different rules and expectations, and how you see yourself in the world around you in different areas has to continually fluctuate and change so that you can function in the environment that you're in. So then we apply that to the mind, body, soul, and the reframing the stress response. You know, if, let's just say, where it says stress response is preparing my body to overcome a challenge, okay? And you can either like shout it out loud, or you can just kind of think about this to yourself, but you would say, what would be different if you were to say, my stress response is, and then kind of fill in the blank for yourself. And you can compare that to what it is today, and what you would like it to be, you know, in a month, in 6 months, or something like that. You know, are there differences? Who knows? In this context of this specific slide, does anyone know what the actual kind of like physiological responses to stress?
Cortisol?
Yeah, what else?
No, that's one.
One for one, that's a great batting average. So yeah, cortisol is the first one. The second one is similar to cortisol, but adrenaline. And that response is your central nervous system kind of taking over your body and saying, hey, something bad is going to happen. We need to get ready to fight or to flee. And that is an automatic biological response that you have no control over. Your heart rate elevates, you may or may not get sweaty, your feet and your hands may start to tingle, your ears might get warm, your breathing, your respiration will get shallow. And that's all biology that just happens, and then your head's like, whoa, what the hell's going on? And that's what comes into the coping mechanisms where you have to use your mind to then retake over your body. Otherwise, you get into situations that are usually regrettable, doing things you wish you hadn't, because simply you weren't thinking. Again, congratulations, you're human. That's normal. And so recognizing, again, how important, going back to how we think of ourselves, how we think of the world around us, and how that applies to our current situation. And recognizing that how we think really does, in fact, control our biological responses. Next slide. Another way of working through stress is more of the social approach. Connecting with others, connecting and caring with others. As human beings, we are social creatures. We thrive in social environments. When humans isolate themselves or are isolated by someone else, I'm pretty sure that you guys know what happens after that. Bad things, mentally and physically. So again, connecting with others is a key component to reducing stress. And also adding a slight caveat to that statement, connecting with others is a key component to reducing stress, or connecting with others with similar values and beliefs is a key component to reducing stress. And the reason why I add that is the current landscape of what's going on in our country. Because if you're just trying to connect with anybody, and you find out that they have different beliefs than you, and are more rigid in their beliefs, and are less flexible in their beliefs, I don't really need to go into that, but I'm sure that you guys can fill in the blanks what happens after that. Other than caring, or other than connecting with others, caring for others can be a stress management tool as well. Oftentimes, and I use this example when I was a kid, simply because I just will always remember it. When I was like, it was like 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. At the time, I hated it because my time was being taken away from me. But my parents would make me volunteer in one of the homeless shelters in the area that I lived, at the soup kitchen, and they would make me serve food to the homeless people that would come to the homeless shelter. And, you know, as an 8 or 9-year-old, I thought it was the dumbest thing, but looking back on it, it's recognizing that, you know, I think this is stressful. These people, like, are scrounging for a bowl of ramen. Like, it puts things in perspective. It's like, who the heck am I to like, think how terrible of a life I have? And so, you know, I'm not telling you guys to volunteer at soup kitchens, but it is a way that can help you reframe your perspective and really kind of reevaluate, you know, what you are valuing, what you are believing. So, what to do when you're stressed out? Yeah, next one, boss. Thank you, sir. We talked about some of the biological markers, and we talked about some of the biological markers and how to recognize them. Interesting about bullet number 3, I'm sure that a lot of people have heard, hey, just slow, deep breaths and you'll be okay. Well, it wasn't until like, when I get the date, it was like 2016 or 17 or 15, I think. But there was actual hard evidence in research that established that when you can control your breathing in certain rhythms, that actually hijacks your central nervous system and releases, or it stops releasing cortisol and adrenaline, like you mentioned, to those stress responses. Even though people have been talking about it for so long, it's like, hey, just take deep breaths, you'll feel better. There's now actual concrete evidence that we have to establish that. Part of the process with recognizing when you're stressed out is oftentimes, I hear this all the time as a therapist, it doesn't work. Okay, cool. Are you trying? Do you even believe it will work if you try? Are you practicing any of these things? And then, you know, the person will be like, well, no. And then I just kind of look at them awkwardly in session, and then they look at me awkwardly in session, and they're like, do you want me to try them? And I go, well, do you want to be stressed out? And then they kind of like look at me awkwardly again, and they're like, well, no. And then we kind of have that really awkward conversation about, I can't do it for you. And so recognizing that, you know, some of these things are cliches, some of these things you've heard from, who knows, your mom, your parents, a mentor, whoever in your life, a coworker. You know, they are evidence-based, they do work, but there also has to be some work done on your end for them to actually put into practice. Questions? Any questions so far? And again, thanks for that last one. Yeah, go for it.
I think I have something for the spouses. Is this like a big group session where I can do it? Or college?
I don't make the rules.
We keep talking about the stressors, but I mean, you've got stressors going on during the day, and then your spouse comes home, and it just collides. You know, how do you guys handle that? And then if your kids had a bad day, well, then everybody's stressed out. What do you do?
Communication, I think, and setting expectations too. I try to remember that even if I think my day was crazy with the toddler tantrum, that I'm sure Cody had a really stressful day as well. And so we have kind of figured out a way to like, let's switch off bedtime every night. Let's do so that I have time to myself and he has time to himself every night. And it takes work, but I would just say honestly, truly communication and setting expectations of maybe when Cody gets home from work, he needs like 15, 20 minutes to sit upstairs by himself, just maybe rest for a second. Or we always like to live far away from base, so he has to drive home to listen to whatever type of music he needs to get his frustrations out and just kind of decompress.
We don't have kids, we have a dog, and we walk every day, and I think that's a really good opportunity to just let it out, just vent. But at some point, you have to just like, okay, we've talked it and hashed it out, now it stops. You get back home, you let it go, and let's move on to something more positive. And just having that like space for us works really well. Just being outside, fresh air, moving a little bit, getting to hash it out, and listening when the other person's talking, not just like, okay, that's nice. I think that's really important.
And again, you know, as a male spouse, I am 100% on board with those things. I joke with my wife, I call her uniform the monkey suit. And as soon as she comes in the house, I won't give her a hug, won't give her a kiss. Upstairs, take the uniform off, and then come back down, then we can hang out. And at this point, it's kind of a joke. She's like, oh my God, babe, this happened, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, out the monkey suit. She's like, and if she goes there, she'll change, and then kind of takes her hair out of a bun, and then we kind of just decompress and chat, and she tells me about everything that's going on and stuff. But yeah, so it's, again, recognizing what works for each family and each spouse is different, because what works for y'all may not work for me or you or anyone else. So kind of moving on, we have about 3-4-ish more slides left, and then I'll be wrapping up. This is that list that the signals or what stress can do to the body, which is not limited to headaches, loss of appetite, grinding teeth, forgetfulness, increased use of alcohol or drugs, insomnia, irritability, apathy, impatience, gastrointestinal problems, hypertension, hyperglycemia, out-of-character behaviors. All of those things, stress has the capability to manipulate you into falling into those things. That's a long list, and it's not limited to that. And again, not that I'm trying to be like overly dramatic or like scare you into going to therapy. That's not my intent. It's more of just kind of like a realization, like, oh, if I don't take care of my mind, I don't want to get hypertension. Like, you can go to McDonald's and smash McDonald's, or you can not take care of your mind. You're gonna get hypertension. Either way. And so it's just kind of a hey, make sure you recognize the capabilities of stress. You can actually skip 15 and then go right to 16. Some of the different ways with these different types of stress: anticipatory stress, situational stress, chronic stress. And I'm kind of curious with y'all in the room, can you add anything to any of those different types of stress? Or what would be good to add, or what would you maybe take away?
I think like the anticipatory stress, something that you talked about with your husband, right? You know, like he needs like 30 minutes, he needs that long drive home. Like, I'm just curious, right? Because that's something that me and my wife kind of went through, is like how people handle stress, right? Like, if you read different stuff about stress, like some people like to internalize, right? Go into their garage, that 30-minute drive home where you can kind of like figure it out. Or other people are like, let's talk about it. And like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I want to figure it out myself, And when I'm ready, so how long did it take you guys to kind of figure out, like, maybe he handles stress different than you, and like, how did that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's still a learning game. This year especially has been incredibly stressful, that I've kind of been figuring out how I handle stress as well. And then add on a toddler who, the second he gets home, he doesn't let us talk. And so I'm like, this is what happened with my day. And Grace is like, Mom, Dad. And we're, shush! And so, we're still honestly truly trying to figure it out. But it took at least a good couple of years to be like, okay, it is better for us to live far away from base, and that's how he processes. I like to talk about my stress, or I like to just go for a walk and process it myself as well. And so I think it is kind of fortunate that we both process stress the same way. But just a lot of communication is what it took to be like, this is what I need, these are my expectations, and this is, I need a couple minutes by myself. And so, and when he got home from deployment, that was it too. He's like, I need a few weeks to just leave me alone for a little bit, and just setting expectations, I think, truly is what helped us.
Is that like planning is key? Is that what that means? Like understanding, like, hey, maybe you need like 30 minutes when you get home because you're anticipating you're going to be stressed out from the end of your day?
Yes, and so I want to add just a little bit of what you were saying at the end. Having a plan and recognizing what your partner needs, with the caveat of also being flexible enough, because what they need today, they may not need that next week, or in 2 weeks, or next month. And so if that part isn't taken into consideration, you'll have one spouse, hooked on, hey, you used to do this one thing that helps you feel better. How come it doesn't make you feel better anymore? Like, what's wrong with you? And then it turns into like, a distance or pursuer relationship where the one spouse is like, hey, this used to work, it doesn't work anymore. And you're like, Jesus, like, just give me some space. And they're like, it doesn't work though. It used to work. And then that can really cause a lot of, unnecessary stress and other things as well. And that's why I say add the caveat and also recognize that it may not work in the future. And being accepting that it works now, excellent, let's utilize it. Just because needs change over time.
I think it depends on the stress too.
Yeah.
Like, if you've just had a crap day, I know Cody, he's probably not wanting me stressed or all of his things, but, this is what he does. But he likes to just drive home and just kind of decompress, but now truck rides, if he had a really bad truck ride, he just needs me to listen. And so I think just figuring out the different things, and I like to talk, like, when my mom drives me nuts yesterday, he just sat there going, okay. Where if I just had a really stressful day with tantrums, I just need myself to just walk outside by myself. So I think it depends on the situation as well.
A big thing with anticipatory stress, and then we'll move on after this, is I said it a little bit earlier, probably 20 minutes ago, recognizing what is and what is not in your control. This is a big thing with the anticipatory stress, is people will, planning in general, people will plan for everything that they don't control and forget about focusing on what they do control. And that's like, I love the analogy, it's like, okay, enter hamster wheel, where action doesn't necessarily mean productivity. And recognizing, and the whole control thing too is, and I'll just kind of give these real points and then we'll move on, is the interesting thing about control is, and some may agree or disagree, and that's okay, we can talk about that later in the session, wink. There's 5 things that you control as a human. It's your actions, it's your efforts, your attitudes, your manners, and your words. That's all you control, 100% of the time. That's also the only thing that you control. So when you put things into perspective like that, especially when dealing with someone else at work, or dealing with a family member, or dealing with a spouse, you can only control those things. And then when you kind of get outside of that control, that's when things kind of start to get a little bit hairy. Or, you can't control what they do, true, but you do control how you react to what they do. And so that's another, kind of anticipatory stress, trying to plan and recognize, okay, if we get into an argument, how am I going to react? If we get into an argument about a stressful day or whatever, how am I going to handle myself? I can't control my partner, but I can control what I do in those situations. Situational stress, breathe, try and relax as much as possible. Sometimes that's not doable. Sometimes you can't get a quiet space and work on breathing techniques. Another technique that I've used for years with clients, it's the see, hear, feel, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do it anytime throughout the day, and you can do it without anyone knowing what you are doing. So essentially, it's identifying 5 things that you see, 5 different things that you see, 5 different things that you hear, 5 different things that you feel. So for an example, really quick, I can see my water bottle, my laptop, your pen on your arm, your mask over there, the screen, and notebooks. 5 things. I hear the planes, I hear my voice talking, I hear that chair rattling, I hear the feet over there in the corner, and then I heard someone shuffling on the table. I can feel my left foot on that metal leg. I feel my butt in the seat. I feel the bar under my toes, the bar on my heel, and the shirt on me right now. And when you can categorize those things, take that inventory with your own self, you can do it all without making a sound, and you categorize the 5 things that you see, 5 things that you hear, 5 things that you feel, and then 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1. More times than not, you probably won't make it past 2. the reason behind that is you get so focused on taking that inventory of what's going on around you and what you can feel and what you can see, and your breathing will relax, your posture will relax, your heart will slow down, and then, you know, you'll be like, well, you know what I was thinking about. And these are, it's a very simple tool that you can do, again, like I said, without anyone, you know, knowing what's going on. You're not like sitting in the corner like counting your breaths, like someone's gonna probably see you and be like, hey, you all right? You doing okay? And then a real quick comment on chronic stress. Handling stress, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. There's no magic pill or quick fix. It's consistent work over time. That's all. It's not fancy. It can be awkward at times. It can be difficult. It can be unwanted. However, it's doable. And as long as you can recognize that it's doable and you're okay with that, then you're golden. This day and age, I say we, humans, have begun to prioritize the instant gratification paradigm where, you know, I'm gonna get a TikTok so I can get 10 million followers and become insta-famous and make money selling Charmin commercials on Instagram. Okay, but also, you're a human, and what happens when the internet crashes? And so, people get these grand ideas of, you know, if I can just do this, everything will be better. If I can just get this, everything will be better. You know, if I can just focus on everything except myself and focus on everyone else, life will be okay. And so recognizing that there is no magic pill, there is no quick fix. It's small behavioral changes over time, and consistently working on those things. You can go to the next one. Again, this is kind of a quick review of some of the stress things that we've talked about, you know, looking for a break. Laughter is great medicine, you know, I don't know who would argue that. If you do, you're a psychopath. Just kidding. And recognizing that, you know, in summary, some of the things we talked about is believing that stress is and can be helpful. Again, if, you know, you're able to recognize how you see yourself in the world will change and where you're at, so you can manage it accordingly. You can hop to the next one. You know, being able to reframe your stress response, connecting with people and caring for people. That is it for me. Does anyone have any questions about what we went over? Any questions for me? Any questions about me? Any questions about the MFLC program? Yeah, go for it.
So as far as I kind of see stress as kind of like adversity, and how do you deal with adversity? So at what point does stress be good for you and then become bad? That's my question.
Okay, good question. So, clinically speaking, the key term is functional impairment. Stress is a functional impairment and or a negative attribute in your life when you can no longer go about your business as usual, when you can't perform at work the way that you need to perform, when you're no longer safe at work, when you're unable to keep your social connections, when you're unable to have healthy relationships with your family or your partner. When those things start to crumble and fall off, or with the physical things, when you start noticing all these physical aspects with your health that we talked about earlier, when you start noticing them starting to deteriorate, that's the point where then you kind of have to have a gut check and be able to call yourself on your own stuff. Be like, man, my health is really slipping lately. I haven't been sleeping great. You know, what do I control? What do I want to be different? And you have to be able to be okay with calling yourself on some of those things and recognizing, hey, I think stress is really now actually getting bad. Does that help?
All right.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions or comments if you have one or no?
I was gonna say that just because I don't wanna laugh at movie night does not make me a psychopath.
Is there a story behind it?
Every time we decide what to watch on Netflix.
Excellent.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Talking about perspective and preparation, this is for each member of the panel. We have a lot of young families or people who are gonna start families, get married, stuff like that. So to help shape our perspective a little bit and the people watching at home, what advice would you give yourself back in the day as you were getting started on this military, this spouse journey? What do you wish you knew then that would really come in handy over the past few years?
You just have to be flexible with your planning. You may wanna take that weekend away, it may not happen, you may have a bad day, your spouse might have a bad day. And you're just gonna have to, it's a cheesy line, I guess, roll with the punches and learn that, okay, when things happen, have a plan B, for us, so have a girlfriend, have another family you can hang out with, have an activity, reading a book, working out, have some various outlets that you can utilize. That's what I would have told myself, because when we first got married, I was like, oh, this thing is happening to me, he can't be home, it's, oh, woe is me, and what I've learned now is like, okay, well, that needs to go out the door, and it's my attitude how I deal with when those things happen, because a jet's gonna break, you're gonna PCS, your life's gonna get turned upside down 8 times, and you just have to learn to adapt and have outlets for that. And he mentioned, what works now, maybe one day I just wanna chill and read a book, be by myself, maybe the other day I wanna do a CrossFit class and throw some weight around and be angry, and that works, it changes. That's what I would tell myself 10 years ago.
When they're gone, you can't just not live your life, because they're gonna be gone a lot, right? So you don't wanna just sit at home and be looking at the clock, waiting for when they're gonna come home. You have to keep going out and doing things, do things with your friends, go home, visit your family, take your kids somewhere. Can't just sit by yourself for 2 weeks.
Or 3. I would tell myself to just find your support system in every race that you're into, because they become like your family. And also, before we had kids, I didn't realize how wrapped up in that identity you would become is you are mom, and that's it. And I think finding hobbies, and especially I think finding hobbies honestly out of the Air Force, because I feel like that identity becomes so ingrained in the service members and the family in general. And a former commander, the best thing he ever told us was to have friends outside of the military. And I never truly understood it until I was like, wow, we talk about things other than flying. So that was I think the most important thing for us, is to be like, okay, you need to have friends and hobbies, and whether that be through church or through a gym or through just, when you try rugby here in Nashville, like just things to do outside of the military. I think that's incredibly important to get involved in the community around you and have an identity other than just the military and being a mom.
I think for me it was probably because I was ignorant. It's all good, I can accept that. I basically told myself going into it, not that big of a deal, I'll be fine. And then on my wife's first TDY, it was like 2 or 3 days in, and I hadn't gotten a job yet because we PCS, and I was trying to get my license transferred, so I was just chilling. And it was like 2 or 3 days in, and I was like, what the hell do I do? I was like sitting in our house by myself, watching ESPN, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? I didn't like work out for 3 or 4 days, and I was like, this is bizarre. Didn't think I'd be here. and I think it was like my best advice to give myself back then is accept that you're not, like accept that you can't do it by yourself, and that yes, your wife has stuff to do outside of like the marriage and the relationship for work, obviously. And it was like, oh, I need to have stuff to do outside of the marriage and outside of work. And so, going in, I would have, I guess, loved to have that perspective before, like, it clicked, and I was just, like, sitting in our house by myself like a puppy, like. I don't know what to do.
All right, we have one question online.
Okay.
It says, based on previous comment, what are some ways to address the stress that comes when there are conflicting priorities that need
So when they're,
I.e. work versus family time is what they said.
perfect. That is something that I can't tell that person to do. It really, we touched a little bit on it, like right in the beginning, and then we didn't really go back to it. And that's again, being able to compare and contrast your beliefs and values versus what you want professionally, and prioritizing them as such. So if you believe that family is the most important thing, and you value quality time with your family, that automatically says, hey, I can't bring work home 5 days a week, just right off the bat. And so it's kind of a quick exercise that you can do, is you can kind of, on one piece of paper, you write down all your priorities. Doesn't matter what order they are, just write down all the important things that you have in your life. It can be work, friends, family, relationships, whatever. All the priorities, things to you that are important in your life. And then in the second paper, have them side by side. And in the second paper, again, we talked about a little bit ago, calling yourself on your own BS, and then prioritizing that list on the second paper side by side, and being okay with how it falls. And maybe you don't value family time as much as you thought you did. That's probably a really crappy feeling. I mean, I would assume. But recognizing that, hey, if you prioritize these things on this second list, and you're uncomfortable with that list and how you prioritized it, you know what that tells me? You need to re-examine your beliefs and values. Because when they don't match your priorities, and to have that discrepancy, there's gonna be that internal struggle, that internal battle that you're facing, trying to, being the number one person in your squadron and get stratted, I don't know the exact terminology, and being like number one parent on the soccer field or whatever. Like, is it possible to have both? Maybe. Is it likely to have both? I don't know. So, I hope that answers your question. No response. Excellent. Didn't answer their question.
Looking for the depth.
Was there anything else on that, on the chat thing, or was that it?
No, that was the only question so far.
Cool. Well, again, I sent my contact in that slide to Ryan. He said he'd push it out to the folks.
Already sent out on the channel.
Perfect, already sent out. I appreciate y'all's time. Apologies if I got windy. I didn't realize that I was at an hour already. But again, thank you. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me with the contact that Ryan sent. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so just before we close out, thank you so much. This was such an important discussion, and I think valuable, especially moving forward. Stephen, thank you for coming over.
Yeah, absolutely.
We appreciate your time. Thank you for being such a part of it. Glad that folks can reach out to you. And to our key spouses, thank you so much for providing your perspective. It's so important because it's stuff that we don't think about. You guys give us that insight on things that we need. Is there a way that you can put out your information so that the folks online can reach out to you if need be? How can they get in contact with you?
We have a Facebook group, the 22nd. We also have all of our information listed, I think, at the squadron level, our individual phone number, the thing.
Our information is also with Colonel Trumbull too,
Yeah.
and you can push it out on there too, if service members want to reach out as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for participating. Thanks for everybody online. Have a great day.
Mrs. Trumbull brought donuts,
Oh, donuts.
because COVID hasn't done enough to our